and how this commodity derivative market is going to affect, or it is affecting the overall ecosystem partners, overall ecosystem. What we can say that not only the value chain, this agriculture value chain, but other related entities or other related ecosystem as well. And with special reference to the situation of the farmers and how this can help farmers, and how the farmers can take or use these commodity derivative markets to mitigate at least certain extent their price risk, what they can face or what they normally face in their production cycle. So with this, I want to start. So once again, I thank the institute. So before going to edge, I don't think that there is much need for the introduction of the agriculture and all those. So there are a couple of slides because I was not knowing who the audience is actually. So there are a couple of slides on the introduction. So I'll go through in very brief about those. So to start with, as for what we understand from the commodities, so basically commodities are classified among two broad categories. One is can be considered as hard commodities and another is soft commodities. So what do we understand by hard and soft? So hard is the commodity which are mined normally, and soft are the commodities which are mostly produced on the land or cultivated. So all the food commodities, they are the soft commodities, and the mined commodities like metals and all those things, they come under the hard commodities. So again, there are different sub classification both for the hard commodities as well as the soft commodities. Say for in hard commodity, they are energy, and under energy they are crude oil, natural gas. Then again in hard commodity there are metals. Under metals there are base metals, precious metals, ferrous metals. So base metals like copper, zinc, aluminum, nickel, all those things. And precious metals, we all know the gold, silver, platinum. Similarly, coming to the soft commodities, so we all know about the cereals, pulses, oilseed, and all those things. Then there are few commodities. What happens? All these commodities, like these food commodities, like cereals, pulses, oilseed, all those things, sometimes we consume raw commodity, or sometimes we consume in the process form. But there are certain commodities which are not consumed directly in the raw form, or they are not being consumed directly, but they form as a raw material. They are being used by certain kind of industry as a raw material to produce certain kind of products. So these commodities, they do form as a raw material for the production of some products by these industry. So there are, say, for the castor seed, guar seed, cotton, all those things. Say for cotton, what cloths we are wearing, it is made up of a commodity that is called cotton. So textile industry is the industry that uses cotton, the commodity, as a raw material to produce cloths. Similarly, rubber, soya, all those things are there are n number of commodities. So what do we see over there? That whether knowingly or unknowingly, we are surrounded with commodities in our daily life. So since morning till we go to the bed, and throughout our life, we are consuming these commodities, whether knowingly or unknowingly that they are classified as commodities or not, but we consume these. So just in brief, that these commodities, as we are associated with the agriculture institutes or something related to agriculture ecosystem. So what I am currently going to discuss that these prices, how do prices behave in the supply, means over the year or over the time period. So over in this slide, we can see that there is one commodity that is called soybean. Soybean is a Kharif season commodity. And the chart, what it is showing is 10-year price chart that shows the seasonality in the prices of soybean. So what do we observe in this chart? That the price of this soybean commodity is moving towards the lower side, or making a moving towards the downside when there is a harvesting season. So obviously, when there would be harvesting season, then the supply pressure would exceed the demand, and overall the prices would try to go downside. So what I am trying to emphasize over here, that this situations holds true for more than 70% of the time. It is not true for 100% of the time, but for around 70% to 80% of the time, this situations holds true. What does that mean for any ecosystem player or partner and even farmer? So obviously we can very well correlate with the farmer situation, that if the prices are moving downside during the harvesting months, and if we see that almost they are hovering towards the lowest of whole year during the harvesting month, they are hovering towards the lowest of whole year. So what does that mean for a farmer? So it means that a farmer is bound to face the lowest price of whole season or whole year. That too in 70% of the time, or 7 years out of their last 10 years. So by time he is deciding that what crop to sow, and by the time he has already sown his crop, he doesn't know that what price he would receive at the time of harvesting. Sometimes, sometimes what happens during the time of harvesting, there are around 20 to 25% or 30% of the situation, prices go upside also. It is not that 100% of time prices are going downside. There are 20-30% of times when prices can go upside also. So this holds true due to some reason that there could be abnormal weather scenario, or there could be some geopolitical tension, or some government policies related to restriction on imports and exports, all those things. So whenever this kind of situation prevails, then there we can see that the prices are going upside even during the harvesting or after harvesting season also. So in the lower side of this chart, there is one table over where we can see that the price volatility of this commodity ranges from around 10% to 25-30%. So what I am going to emphasize over here, so this same situation prevails for almost all the commodities. More or less same situation prevails for almost all the commodities. So sometimes this volatility increases by as much as 50% or 60%. Sometimes there is adverse rainfall, or I mean to say the poor rainfall. So we can see that in those years, we can see that these prices are going upside by more than 50% also. And if sometimes there is consecutive good monsoon and good harvest, then we can see that prices are going down by as much as 30-40% or 50%. So again, this is nothing as we all know, but still I'll take just a few seconds over there. So this depicts the agriculture value chain, and in this agriculture value chain, farmer is standing at one side, and one side of the value chain, and we as a consumer are standing at the other side of the value chain. And in between, there are different intermediaries who are creating different type of utilities. In case of, as we know that these commodities or production of these agriculture crops are seasonal in nature. So not all the crops are produced everywhere. Not all the crops are produced in every season. So there are the various kind of intermediaries who participate in this agriculture value chain, and they create a kind of utility in terms of time utility, or farm utility, or space utility, location utility. So there are different kind of aggregators. There are warehousing ecosystem. There are traders and stockists. There are different kind of processors, importers and exporters. They are intermediaries. They are doing their crucial role. They are participating for their crucial role of providing these commodities to consumers like us when they are not available by the farmers, from the place where it is being produced by at the farmer's field to other places where it is not being produced, from the season when it is being produced to other season when it is not being produced. So all these intermediaries, they are doing crucial role, or they are doing through crucial activity of creating these kind of utilities for us. But sometimes what happens, there are excessive intermediaries. There means the number of intermediaries are more than actual or optimum. And sometimes what happens, as we discussed in the previous slide, that prices can go either upside or downside, depending on the demand and supply situation. So not only the farmers, but also all these intermediaries, they are exposed to the certain kind of risk in terms of price risk. Suppose I am an intermediary, suppose I am a processor. Now I want to buy a commodity from any market. I want to transport it to my processing unit. Then I will process it, and then I'll package it, and then I'll transport it to the consumption center. So all these activity would require certain amount of time. And during that time, there are chances that prices could change. They can either go upside or go downside. But suppose I have bought any commodity at a price of rupees 5,000 a quintal, and I have incorporated a cost, I have added a cost of around 300 rupees towards the processing and 200 rupees towards the transportation. So my net cost of this commodity is around 5,500 rupees a quintal. Now, by the time I am able to deliver this commodity to consumers in distant markets, so at that point in time, suppose the price goes down below 5,500 rupees. So this is unfavorable situation for me as a processor or as a supplier, and this could lead to a loss to me, or it could impact adversely on my profitability, because there would be other suppliers or other processors who would be able to supply at a lower price point. There would be competitor of me in that market due to their locational advantage, we can see, or their other cost efficiency. So all these kind of price, all these kind of challenges are there. Each and every intermediary faces these kind of challenges. Farmers or anyway, they are facing these kind of challenges. So what are the solution? Is there any kind of instrument available that can be used by these intermediaries as well as those farmers, that can be of some help in mitigating these kind of challenges in terms of the challenges that is arising out of that price risk or price volatility? So commodity derivative markets provides a certain kind of instruments that can be used to mitigate the price risk to certain extent, not 100%, but to certain extent. And that too in certain commodity. Not all the commodities are being produced by the farmers are available for sale and buy on these derivative market. But yes, still there are around 25 to 30 commodities, major commodities that are available, agriculture commodities I am talking about, that are available on these derivative exchanges that can be used by these intermediaries. So this is nothing to say that any good market, just this slide is nothing, just to compare the requirement of a good market and how this derivative market, I'm just putting this slide over here just to compare that necessities of a good market, a competitive market, how this derivative market is fulfilling some of the criteria of those necessities. So any good market should provide a fair price discovery. So fair price discovery means normally we understand what is the price discovery. With each and every transaction, there is some price point emerging out of those transactions, and we can see that this price point at which the transaction has taken place between buyers and sellers is the price discovered from that one transaction between buyer and seller. So similarly, there are suppose 100 or thousands of transactions between different buyers and sellers in any particular market. So we can see that there are thousands of price points, and those price points are said to be prices discovered through those transactions. So why I am telling it over here, that if in any market there are less number of participants, whether on the buyer side or on the seller side, then in that scenario there would be less liquidity, and due to that there would be that type of market would not facilitate fair price discovery. So if you visit any APMC Mandi, Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee Mandi, what we know in our ecosystem, so where the farmers are going to sell their produce. So even if we are visiting to any large, one of our largest mandis, so what we observe over there, at one hand, we find that there are thousands and thousands of farmers queuing up to sell their produce on any particular day in peak arrival season. And on the other hand, on the buyer side, we find that there are hardly 15, 20, 25 buyers. This is the case of most liquid mandi or largest mandis of the country. But if we visit smaller mandis, then we'll find hardly 4, 5 or 6 buyers for any particular commodity on any particular day. So there are high probability, there are high chances that prices could be skewed towards one end. So I visited few mandis over there. In my different assignments, I visited different mandis over there for any particular commodity, any particular day. Sometimes there are only one buyer or two buyers. So how can we say that the good price discovery would happen where there is only two buyers and there are 100 sellers? It is not possible at all. Then the market should be transparent. So transparent enough means what do we understand with the transparency? Means all kind of market information that is required or that is related with any particular commodity or any particular marketplace or any particular any policy related to that commodity and marketplace should be available to everyone at same point in time. So it should not be any case that any particular information is available to large buyer or large seller or large farmer, and it is not available to a small level buyer or a small level seller or a small level farmer. If all the information is freely and immediately or at the same time simultaneously available to each and every market participant, then we can say that this kind of market is transparent enough. Then the market should be trustworthy in case of payment mechanism, the quality of goods and services, and if at all there arises any dispute in between buyers and sellers, so market should provide proper resolution mechanism, or market should have proper resolution mechanism for those kind of disputes. But what happens if we see that, if we just imagine or visualize any physical mandi, so do we think that any transaction, suppose right now any transaction has happened in between one buyer and one seller, so the price point that has at which the transaction has happened is not immediately readily available to any person sitting far away from that particular marketplace. So if any transaction has happened in any mandi in North India, so the price at which the transaction has happened, it would not be immediately available to any person sitting in any mandi in the southern India. In this, I am talking about the physical market scenario. Though EggMarkNet provides the minimum price, maximum price, and model price, but each and every transactional price, it is not still available. So there are physical what this kind of market we were discussing till now, it was the scenario of the physical market. So in 2003, there another kind of market came into existence that we call virtual market. So what is difference between this physical market and virtual market? In physical market, to transact, buyers and sellers both need to be present in front of each other. So farmers are taking their produce to the mandi, and buyers are also coming to the mandi. They are getting theirs themselves registered in those mandi, and they are buying from there. So sometimes if they are not present there, then they send their representative. So buyers and sellers both need to be present in front of each other in physical premise, in physical market case. But in virtual market, it is not the necessity. It is not the necessary case. So buyer and sellers could be, because why it is not the necessity? Because In virtual market, the transaction takes place in an online platform. So online platform works on internet. So buyers and sellers could be sitting at faraway places and still they can transact. So this is called virtual market, and the actual payment and settlement can be done virtually as well as physically also. So over here in the virtual transaction, there arises one question that how the buyers and sellers would be assured that what kind of quality they are, suppose how come a buyer would be assured that what kind of quality he would be receiving after the payment, and how a seller could be assured that when he would be receiving the payment and payment, or he would be receiving the proper payment or full payment or not for the produce he has sold. So all those kind of things, how and why. So these answer will be given in later slides. Before that, we are going to discuss the objective of this virtual market. So in 2003, what happened? The government allowed to start national level commodity derivative exchanges. So 3 exchanges were set up in towards the end of 2003. So they were NCDEX, National Commodities and Derivative Exchange Limited, MCX, Multi Commodity Exchange Limited, and NMC, National Multi Commodity Exchange. So initially, three national level exchanges were set up, and they started offering trading in futures. So what is futures? We will discuss in later slides. So they started offering trading in different commodities, and that too trading in futures instrument. So now, as these commodities are being offered on an online platform, so any person sitting anywhere can transact in those commodities or buy or sell those commodities. So it is not necessary that suppose I want to sell any commodity, so it is not necessary that right now I should possess that commodity, I should have that commodity, then only I can sell. It is not the case in this derivative market. Whereas in physical market, I can sell only and only if I am having that commodity. So the objective of this kind of market to exist there were 2 major objectives. One is the price discovery, and second is the price risk management. These 2 are the main objectives. So price discovery, we discussed what is the price discovery and what is the challenges in the physical market in terms of price discovery. So over here in derivative markets, as it doesn't require buyers and sellers to be present in front of each other, so any person from sitting anywhere can transact. So it increased the number of participation both from the buyer side and the seller side. So if you see in any physical market, there are just in any particular mandi, you can find just a couple of buyers. But at any given point in time, it is centralized marketplace. So the buyers across the country would be putting their orders in the same market, on the same platform. So it increases the number of buyers. Sellers are already there, but it also increases the number of buyers. And further, in sellers case also, in any particular mandi, the sellers are farmers around those around the location or geography around this mandi are only eligible for selling in that mandi. But over here, any person from anywhere in the country can put their selling order. So now, what is the benefit of this? So it increases the number of buyers and sellers participating on this market by many-fold. So obviously, with the rule of the economics, we can understand that if there is more number of buyers and sellers, there would be more competition, and due to healthier competition, the market would be more efficient. Secondly, it also provides instruments for the price risk mitigation. So the price risk that we discussed in our initial slides, so this market can be used to mitigate the price risk to a certain extent. So how it can be used for that, we would discuss in later slides. So the major features of this market is, it is first the centralized marketplace. It is only one marketplace as against the fragmented marketplace in physical market. It is much more liquid than the physical counterpart. So there is efficient price discovery over here, and it is very well regulated by the regulator, that is SEBI, Securities and Exchange Board of India, that also regulates the equity market. So over the years, as of now, we have 5 national level exchanges. So MCX and NCDEX we already discussed. So later on, there's one more exchange, more exchanges came up, commodity exchanges came up. Those were ACE Commodity Exchange and ICX. So ACE Commodity Exchange later on surrendered their membership, and the first one of the first 3 exchanges, that in NMC, National Multi Commodity Exchange, that was merged with new entrant, that was ICX. So NMC got merged with ICX. So there are now 3 exchanges, these MCX, NCDEX, and NMC with merged with ICX, and there are 2 stock exchanges, BSE and NSE. Earlier they were only stock exchanges, but SEBI, with one regulation of what this one change in the regulations, what did the SEBI do? It created a regulation in which it put all the exchanges at par. That means now all exchanges, earlier what happened, earlier these exchanges were MCX, NCDEX, NMC, all those were commodity exchanges. But after SEBI came into existence, after SEBI taking over the regulation of the commodity markets, it put all the exchanges at par. So now each and every exchange can offer either commodity derivative or currency derivative or security derivative. So any exchange can offer any kind of the instrument. So with this, BSE and NSE also started offering commodity derivative, few, not all the commodities, but in a couple of commodities, they also started offering derivative instruments. But overall, if we see the share of the commodity trading, so we find that MCX is the largest exchange for the non-agri commodities, and NCDEX is the largest exchange for agriculture commodities. So for agriculture commodities, more than 80% of share of in agriculture derivative is being catered by NCDEX, and remaining from all other exchanges. So this is NCDEX per se. NCDEX is a system, main parent company, and along with that there is National Clearing Corporation Limited. So there is a activity that we can say that we call clearing and settlement. So clearing and settlement happens through this NCCL. Then there is NERL, National E-Repository Limited, that is responsible for the stored goods or commodity that has been kept under warehouses or NCDEX approved warehouses for delivery purpose. And then there is a NICR, that NCDEX Institute of Commodity Markets and Research, that is responsible for creating awareness and education in the ecosystem. Then there is National E-Market Limited. Earlier it was known as NCDEX Spot Exchange. So later on it was renamed as National E-Market Limited. So that is the entity that we might know that ENAM, if we have heard ENAM. So ENAM is a concept taken from the Karnataka state government's REMS, that is Rashtriya E-Market Services Limited. Then Rashtriya E-Market Services Limited is the joint venture between NEML and state government of Karnataka. So now coming towards the derivative. So commodity derivative market, we already discussed, it consists of 3 terms: commodity, derivatives, and market. So we discussed the commodity, we discussed the market, and now we are going to discuss the derivative. So there are 3 kinds of derivative that are being offered by these exchanges. So NCDEX offers 3 kind of instruments, that is futures, option, and indices. So what are the features of these things? We will discuss later. Currently in this slide, we can only see that there are different kind of commodity groups. Say for oil, seeds, grains and pulses, spices, fibers, sweetener means sugar and all those things. They are available under futures segment. And then there another instrument that is called option. Among that options, there are 8 commodities: guar seed, guar gum, chana, soybean, mustard seed, maize, wheat. So then among indices, there is one indices that is called Agridex. So not only in our country, but also in other countries, there are different exchanges, and some exchanges are specific to commodity derivatives. They are offering commodity derivatives for the traders or participants across the world. So the largest exchange, largest commodity exchange in the world is Chicago Mercantile Exchange, that is called CME. So that offers different commodities like maize, soybean, soya meal, wheat, rice, gold, silver, all those things. Then our neighboring nation like China, it is also one of the, it is also having one of the largest exchanges. So say for Dalian Commodity Exchange, Shanghai Futures Exchange, Zhengzhou Commodity Exchange, all these commodity exchanges offer one or other commodities in either in future segment or option segment. There are certain commodities, especially known for a single commodities like single or a couple handful of commodities like Malaysia. In Malaysia, there is Bursa Malaysia. So that is more famous for the palm oil contracts. So all these exchanges are there across the globe who offer various commodity derivative instruments. Now, what is this derivative? So derivative, as the term defines it, it derives the price of itself from the counterpart. Counterpart means the underlying is the commodity that is being traded in the physical market. Say for chana derivative. Chana derivative means futures option or index. So anything it is related to chana derivative that derives its underlying price from the commodity that is being traded, the same commodity chana that is being traded in the physical market. So there are that physical market is called basis center. So for chana it is say for Bikaner in NCDEX, the chana contract, the basis center is Bikaner. So the future price of chana derivative is, and that it takes clue from the spot price of chana that is being traded in Bikaner Mandi of Rajasthan. So that's how it derives its prices from the underlying commodity that is being traded in the spot market. That's why they are called derivatives. Then why they are called contracts? We understood the derivative, but why they are called contracts? Because in physical market, suppose a buyer and seller are entering in any transaction, so buyer is immediately paying the money and seller is immediately delivering the commodity to the buyer. So the exchange of goods is taking goods and money is taking place immediately. But in derivative market, it is not like that. Over here, what is being traded, it not exactly at the point of transaction, at the time of transaction, it not exactly what is being traded is the commodity, but it is a contract that is being traded. So at the point of transaction, suppose right now I and you want to participate in this market. So I can use this electronic platform that is provided by NCDEX or any of the other exchange, and you can also use that similar platform. But in physical market, as buyer and seller were present in front of each other, they knew each other. Over here, buyer and seller, despite they are participating on the same platform and they could participate at the same point in time, same moment, but still they would not be able to know that who is the other party, who is the counterparty. They would not be able to know. So buyer doesn't know who is the seller doesn't know who is the buyer. So in this kind of market, for the buyers and sellers, the counterparty is the exchange. So I am seller, I am selling on the exchange. I am buyer, I am buying from the exchange. So exchange acts as a counterparty. And in turn, I am entering into an agreement that yes, I am ready to buy. Suppose I am a buyer, I bought any, I entered in a transaction towards buying side at 5,000 rupees per quintal, suppose say for chana. So I bought chana at 5,000 rupees per quintal in derivative market, futures contract. So in that sense, I entered into a contract that yes, at given point in time that has been already specified in the contract. So I would buy at 5,000 rupees. I will take delivery at the by paying a price of 5,000 rupees. But when I would be able to take delivery, so not immediately as against the physical market. This over here delivery happens at certain date in future. That's why it is called futures contract. So on NCDEX, in this chart we can see that the very second column, very first column is the name of the commodity. On very second column, we can see the different dates associated with each and every commodity. So in the column number 2, in row number 4, so we can see that chana contract is there. That is date is written 20th May 2021. In column number 2 and row number 5, we can see that 18 June 2021. Then below that 20th July 2021. So that means, suppose I am buying today, I am entering into a contract. This is today's screenshot. So this is today's market. Suppose I am buying today, but I would not be able to take delivery of that commodity. I would not be able to possess that commodity right now today. So when I would be able to get the commodity, so I would be able to get the commodity only upon the expiry. So expiry is the time at which this contract expires. That means after that, this contract is no more available. So on 20th May 2021, on that day or any date already defined in the contract, I would be able to take the delivery despite I am entering into the contract today. I am buying today. Secondly, as I am buying today, but I am not I'm not able to get the delivery today for that particular commodity. So I don't need to pay the entire amount. So what I need to pay? I need to pay a fraction of that total value of that commodity. So that is called margin. So by paying a fraction of total value of the commodity, I can enter into a contract on this futures market, either on the buying side or on the selling side. If I am a buyer, I can enter into contract that I would be buying this commodity at this price. So price is being fixed today. What's the price is there? Suppose we can see the close price in the 1, 2, 3, 4. In the fifth column, so there is one price. It is 4. This close price. So close price is the last price. So in May 20, against we can see that against May 2021 contract, the commodity is being LTP is last price, close price, previous price. So commodity is being traded. Yesterday the commodity was traded at 5405. Today commodity is being traded at 5364. So say for the sake of simplicity, suppose commodity is being traded at 5,500 rupees or 5,400 rupees. So I am entering into contract that yes, I would be buying this commodity at 5,400 rupees and I would be taking the delivery on 20th of May. Similarly, suppose I am a seller. So I am entering into a contract that yes, I would be selling this. I am selling this commodity at 5,400 rupees, and I would be giving the delivery on 20th of May. So both buyer and seller are agreeing that they would take or give delivery on 20th of May. That is certain date, some date in future, not today. So that's why it is called futures contract. So there are various terminologies over here that expiry date already, and there's a high and low are the prices during the day. The high means, as now the name suggests, that highest price during the day, the lowest price during the day. Now, what all things are written in the contract? Because I am a buyer or I am a seller, we both, suppose they are a buyer and seller, both are entering into a contract with the exchange that yes, they would be buying and selling the commodity at this given point in time. So what other things are there in that particular contract? So that contract also suggests that, also explains that what is the expiry date, already discussed. So that also suggests that what are the quality parameters, what are the quantity parameters. So each and everything that can impact the prices, all those things are standardized, that have been standardized, already written in that contract note. So for each and every commodity, there would be a contract note that is depicts that all those parameters that can affect the prices, that puts some certain limits on certain parameters, that explain that yes, whatever buyers and sellers are entering into a contract with, so they are going to take or give delivery for the commodity that are having this parameters, or that are confirming this and parameter. So quality parameters means this commodity should have this much percentage of moisture, this much percentage of if it is oil seed commodity, this much percentage of oil seed, this much percentage of broken seed or foreign matter, all those things, everything is fixed. Similarly, quantity parameters means, suppose whatever I am going to buy, so it is not possible for me, or whatever I am going to say, it is not possible for me to buy or sell. Yes. Someone was telling something. Okay. Continuing. So it is not always possible for me to buy and sell in any quantity of the commodity. In physical market, I can buy 1 quintal, 2 quintal, 1.5 quintal, 10 ton, 10.5 ton, whatsoever. Similarly, I can sell whatsoever the quantity of the commodity. But in futures market or derivative market, the quantity is also standardized. So anybody wants to buy or sell can buy or sell minimum 1 unit or multiple of that unit, that is called as lot. So say for in chana, the minimum unit is 10 metric tons. In soybean, the minimum unit is 5 metric ton. In case of jeera, minimum unit is 3 metric ton. So someone wants to buy or sell jeera, he or she would be buying or selling 3 metric ton or 6 metric ton or 9 metric ton. That means 3 metric ton and multiple of 3 metric ton. If someone wants to buy or sell chana, so he would be buying or selling 10 metric ton or 20 metric ton or 30 metric ton. So this is called lot size. So trading unit, the prices are being depicted in terms of rupees per quintal sometimes, and whereas the trading unit is 10 metric ton. Trading and delivery, say for in chana, whatever price we can see on the exchange, it is suppose say for 5,400 rupees. So this price reflects the price of 1 quintal of chana. But what I am trading is 10 metric ton, not 1 quintal, but 10 metric ton. What I am going to deliver is, or take delivery is not 1 metric ton, 1 quintal, that is 10 metric ton. So there is a concept of tick size. Tick size is minimum price change toward the upside or downside. Say for right now price is of chana is 5,400 rupees and tick size is 1 rupees. So if a buyer wants to buy at he can put its order either at 5,000 rupees, or if he wants to raise the price, he can raise by 1 rupees or multiple of 1 rupees. So next price could be 5,001 rupees, then 5,002 rupees. So it could not be a case that he can offer bid or ask, he can put bid or ask rate at 5,000 rupees 50 paisa. So 50 paisa, 25 paisa is out of question if the tick size is 1 rupee. But if the tick size is 25 paisa, then yes, it is possible. Then price limits. So each and every contract, so every day the prices cannot move beyond 6%. So earlier it was 4%. For right now it is relaxed to 6%. So prices cannot move. Suppose today price is price has closed at 100 rupees. So tomorrow it cannot trade beyond 106 rupees on the higher side and not below 94 rupees on the lower side. And then there comes position limits. Means each and every person, what is the maximum amount he can hold, it is also fixed by the exchange. So one person cannot take beyond that particular limit prescribed by the exchange. Then there is final settlement price. Final settlement price relates to at the time of delivery. So delivery happens at the final settlement price. So final settlement price is the spot price or physical market price of last 3 days averaged. So suppose the contract is expiring on 20th of May. So 18th, 19th and 20th, the spot prices of these 3 days would be averaged, and that would be called a final settlement price. Then there are premiums and discounts for different commodities for various location and qualities. So all those things are described. So we can see that each and every parameter that can affect the prices are already fixed in a contract that can be called as contract, that is called as contract specifications. So now if there is a buyer or if there is a seller, they are sure that whatever commodity they are going to deal with would be possessing this much of quality, quantity and all those things. All those parameters are fixed. Based on those parameters, they can price the commodity, whether they are buyer or seller. Now coming to the trading. So there are different kind of trading. One is short-term trading. Short-term trading are also called as speculation, in which buyers and sellers don't need to possess or take the delivery of the commodity. They just take a view of the market, a direction of the price, and buy and sell. Then there is a concept of hedging. So what we are going to discuss today is hedging. Hedging is the concept in which, hedging the process in which buyers or sellers use these commodity derivative markets to mitigate their price risk. And how it is used, we'll discuss in one of the slides later on. So an arbitrage is a situation when the same commodity is being priced differently in two different markets. Say for in the futures market, the same commodity in Bikaner, suppose I am taking again the Chana example, Chana in Bikaner in spot market and Chana futures market. If the price of the same commodity of same quality is different, so one can buy at lower price and sell it in different other market where it is being priced higher. So by doing that, one can take the advantage of the price difference. So this is called arbitrage. Now, this is just the trading process. So anyone can participate in the futures market. Anyone Indian citizen can participate in the futures market or derivative market. So for that, he or she needs to open an account with any broker member. Broker are the members of the exchange, and for that, just KYC are being followed, just like opening bank account. All those things, address proof, ID proofs would be taken, and account would be opened. Once account is open, one is eligible for trade either on the buy side and sell side, and one can trade by putting a margin. Margin already discussed. So suppose I am taking an example that I am buying chana at 5,000 rupees, and chana, as I know that the lot size of chana is 10 metric tons. So 5,000 rupees per quintal. So 10 metric ton value would be 5,000 into 100 quintal. So that is 5 lakh rupees. So 5 lakh rupees, the worth of the commodity I want to buy by providing a margin, by paying a margin. So margin, I am assuming margin ranges from around 5% to 10-12%. But for the calculation simplicity, I am assuming that 10% margin. So 10% of 5 lakh is 50,000. By paying 50,000 margin, I can buy or I can sell in the futures market. And once suppose I have bought, so once I have bought, then prices either can go up or can go down or stay at the same level. If staying at the same level, no issue. If going down, then I am making loss. If prices are going up, then I am making profit. So this profit and loss is calculated on the daily basis, and this is called mark to market settlement, because If I am in profit, then that profit I can withdraw. If I am in loss, then I need to augment my account with that similar amount to maintain the minimum margin. So 50,000 rupees is the margin to trade. And suppose I have lost some amount, how to loss? Suppose the price goes down by 100 rupees. So 100 rupees per quintal, that means on 10 metric ton, it would be 10,000 rupees. So if price goes down by 100 rupees, that means I am losing 10,000 rupees. If price goes up by 100 rupees, that means I am making money. I am making profit of 10,000 rupees. 10,000 rupees. So this, if I am making profit, then I can square off. So square off is nothing but taking opposite position in the same contract. So I have bought earlier, then I can sell, and by selling I can square off and take the profit away. Suppose I have bought at 5,000 rupees, now price is 5,100 rupees. So I can square off at 5,100 rupees by selling, and 10,000 rupees is mine. But if price goes against me, price goes to instead of 5,100 rupees, price goes to 4,900 rupees. Then I have to pay 10,000 rupees to the exchange to maintain the margin of that 50,000 rupees. So this would be computed till the expiry date. And if I want to exit from the market and before the expiry date, I can exit by taking the opposite position and square up. Suppose I want to, I don't want to square up, but I want to keep my position for longer duration. Longer duration means on 20th of May, the contract would expire, but I want to hold my position for, say for July, 20th of July. So what I need to do, I need to roll over. So rollover is again a new concept in which I need to square off my initial position and take again position in the next contract, or the contract in which I want to enter. So in May month, I want to sell, I have to sell to square off and then take buy position again in the July month, July 20th July expiry. So this is called rolling over. Now, suppose I have taken position on the buy side or sell side and I don't want to square off, I don't want to roll over, then what I can do, I can take or give delivery depending upon my position. If I am seller, I can give delivery. If I am buyer, I can take delivery. For delivery, I have to use the another ecosystem, that is warehousing. So there are different warehouses in delivery centers or delivery locations for each and every commodity that are approved by the exchange. Through those approved warehouses only the delivery can happen. So this delivery concept I would discuss in another slide. Before that, again, this is the seasonality of this soybean price that we discussed in first or second slide. This is the seasonality of chana price. So again, the same scenario, around 70% of the time prices are hovering towards lowest during harvesting season. Now, the concept what we are going to discuss is the hedging. So hedging is nothing but taking the opposite position of my actual position in the physical market. So suppose I'm just taking a simple example of a farmer. So a farmer at the time of sowing, he doesn't know what prices he would fetch at the time of harvesting. So he is more worried that prices would go down. If prices are going up, there is no issue for him. If prices are going down, that is issue for him. So he is worried that prices could go down at the time of harvesting. So for that, he wants to have any solution for that. So in futures market, as we saw that any point, and 1 second, over here we can see that there are different contract expiries. So in China, what we were discussing that 20th May, 18th June, 20th July. So at any given point in time, we can find 6-7 contracts expiring for next 6-7 months. So at the time of sowing, the farmer is away, means farmer is having in front of him that yes, the price of harvesting season, harvesting month contracts are like this. So say for in the month of, this is the price chart from November till October, November till say for December, January. So what I am assuming over here, say for in the month of October, November, there were March contract or April month contract that were running or that were being priced at 5,000 rupees. So again, I am repeating. So in the month of November, there is a contract that is going to expire on 20th of March. The price of that Apple contract in the month of, by sitting in the month of November, on 2nd of November, I am seeing a contract that is going to expire on 20th of April next year. And that is providing me, that is able to provide me a price of 5,000 rupees. Now suppose my cost of production is 3,000 rupees or 3,500 rupees. So what I can do, I can take a sell position in Apple contract. By sitting in November itself, I can take a sell position in Apple contract. Now I am assured that whatever market be, market can go to 4,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees or whatsoever. But I am assured that I would receive this 5,000 rupees. How come? Say for the, I am taking example that price came down to 4,500 rupees. Now, farmer has sold at 5,000 rupees. Now price is 4,500 rupees. So this 500 rupees, he would be receiving profit because he is a seller. He sold at higher price. Now price is lower. So he would be selling, he would be receiving profit at 500 rupees from mark to market, the concept we discussed earlier. And then by delivering the produce in the warehouse, exchange approved warehouse, he would be fetching 4,500 rupees. So 500 rupees from mark to market and 4,500 rupees from the delivery. The sum is 5,000 rupees. So he is able to secure 5,000 rupees. Now suppose he doesn't deliver to the exchange, but he just squares off his produce, his position. So he has taken position at 5,000 rupees. Now he is squaring up his position at 4,500 rupees. So 500 rupees he has earned as a mark to market profit. And what he can do, he can go to his nearby mandi or market, he can sell. So we are assuming that in the physical market also the price is 4,500 rupees for the same quality of the produce. So 4,500 rupees he would receive from the physical market or mandi, and 500 rupees he has received from the futures market. So this way, again, the sum 4,500 and 500, the 5,000 rupees. So 5,000 rupees he has secured as the price of his produce. So the person who, suppose there is another farmer who had not hedged his produce. So he would be having only one option, that is to go to the mandi, and in mandi the prevailing price is 4,500 rupees. So he would be selling at 4,500 rupees. And contrary to that situation, this farmer who had hedged, he would be enjoying the price of 5,000 rupees. So this way, the futures market is helping a farmer to mitigate or to hedge his price risk. There is one drawback of these futures, that if prices are going upside, if prices are coming down, then no issue. If prices are going upside, then also he would be receiving the same price, that is 5,000 rupees, because in that scenario he would be, if price, suppose price goes to 6,000 rupees. So over here he has sold at 5,000 rupees, he is a seller now, and price has moved up. So in this scenario, he would be making loss of 1,000 rupees. So despite upon delivery, he would be fetching 6,000 rupees, but he has already paid 1,000 rupees towards mark to market. So net profit for him, net price for him would be 6,000 rupees upon delivery minus 1,000 rupees that he has paid from mark to market. So 6,000 minus 5 for 1,000, that is 5,000. So over here also, he would be receiving only 5,000 rupees. So now a question comes to our mind, that is there any kind of solution that farmers should be benefited from the lower price, and also he would be able to fetch higher price if physical market is going up. So there is another kind of instrument that is called options. So by using options, one can take advantage of both the sides. So in option, it provides the farmers right to sell at certain point in a certain price point. Suppose over here, again in the month of November, he is having an option contract that of April month that is going to expire on 20th of or before 20th of April, and that option contract is providing him a fixed price or a strike price of 5100 rupees. So the cost of this buying of option contract is 200 rupees. 200 rupees is the premium. So just want to compare it with our insurance premium, what we buy normally for ourselves, or say for the term insurance. Whatever we are, if we are buying a term insurance policy for us, so we are paying a premium to buy a term insurance, or suppose we are buying an insurance for our vehicle or car, we are providing a premium, we are paying a premium. So similarly, we need to pay a premium to buy this kind of benefit, or that is going to be offered by the option contract. So by paying 200 rupees as a premium, I got a right to sell at 5100 rupees. Now if price is coming down to 4500 rupees, so I am able to sell at 5100 rupees, I am able to deliver at 5100 rupees. And also if price is not coming down, rather prices are going up to 6000 rupees, so I don't need to do anything. I just have to leave the contract as such. The contract would expire. I have already paid 200 rupees, that would be lapsed, and I would visit physical mandi, and in physical mandi I would sell at 6000 rupees, the prevailing price. So now my net price is 6000 rupees that I have received from the physical market, and minus 200 rupees what I had already paid as a premium, that is 5800 rupees. So this way I am able to secure, by using option I am able to secure both way the profitability on the both the sides, when prices are going downside and also when prices are going upside. So this way derivative market help the farmers or FPOs to mitigate their price risk. Now in brief, this is the deposit process. Suppose someone wants to give the delivery through the exchange. So he needs to deposit the good in a warehouse that is approved by exchange. So before that, he needs to book the space in the warehouse. So that can be booked online. If space is available, then he receives a confirmation email that yes, the space is available. You can come down on this given date and time. On given date and time, he needs to visit. He needs to bring the commodity to that particular warehouse. So now suppose chana, as we know that chana is 10 metric ton lot, and 10 metric ton chana the farmer or FPO needs to take to the warehouse by keeping it in gunny bags. So assuming that 50 quintal gunny bags, there would be 200 gunny bags in a truck, and that truck with 200 gunny bags, the farmer is reaching to the warehouse. And after reaching to the warehouse, it would be weighed, the truck would be weighed on weigh bridge, and each and every gunny bags would be offloaded. While offloading each and every gunny bags, they would be sampled. Means sample would be drawn from each and every 200 gunny bags, and then all those 200 samples would be mixed together, and then it would be divided in 4 equal parts. One part would be given to the farmer or depositor who has brought the commodity. One part would be kept by the warehouseman. 2 parts would be sent to the laboratory for testing. Out of those 2 parts, 1 part would be used for testing purpose by laboratory, and 1 part would be kept as a reserve. And suppose laboratory analysis or testing analysis confirm that yes, whatever exchange has provided the criteria in terms of quality, that moisture percentage, oil percentage, foreign grains, all those things, it is confirming that criteria, then that would be accepted by the warehouse, and then this commodity could be delivered to exchange. Now, whatever to incentivize FPOs and farmers use this derivative market, exchange and regulator, they are providing certain kind of incentives. So there are cleaning, drying, assaying, all those charges, 100% of the charges towards all those things, assaying, cleaning and drying and sorting, would be reimbursed to the FPOs. The cost of gunny bags, 100% for the cost of gunny bags would be reimbursed to the FPOs. The transportation charge from the farmer's field to the warehouse, 50% of the transportation charge would be reimbursed to the FPOs. The cost of warehousing, that is warehousing rent, the 50% of warehousing rent is being reimbursed to the FPOs. The mandi tax or cess paid, all those, the 50% of mandi tax that are being reimbursed to the FPOs. So all these things are incentives that are being provided to the FPOs so as to encourage them to make use of this derivative market to hedge their price risk. So with this, I am ending my presentation, and now the floor is open for any questions. So I hope I was able to deliver properly. So if any type of query, any sort of query related to any concept, any activity or anything, one can discuss. Please ask freely without any hesitation. Hello, I am audible. Can someone respond whether I am audible? Hello?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. I know, being so experienced fraternity, you might be knowing many of those things, but still, if there is any doubt or on any of that concept or activity or process or anything, please ask. But till now, around 322 farmer producer organizations, they are associated with the exchange, and more than out of those, more than 130 FPOs already participated. So 322 FPOs are registered on the exchange. Out of that, around 130 have traded. So they have used the either futures market or options market to mitigate their price risk. So as we know that for an individual farmer, it is not always feasible for him to make a 10 metric ton or 5 metric ton. So now at this point in time, the role of FPO becomes important to use these kind of market or innovative or modern markets and hedge the price risk, because as we saw that around 70% or more than 70% of times prices are going downside. So they can, FPOs can make use of these kind of markets. Few of the FPOs are already using, few of the using every year on year also. So whosoever are using these kind of markets, so they are able to pass on the benefits to their farmer members. So if someone has any query, they can write in chat box also, if at all there is any. So whether this the topic was of any use or app delivered properly or not, just whether you people didn't understand anything, something like that. So I know many of you might be knowing a lot about these kind of markets, or might be repetitive for you, but still there would be some people who might not be very well aware of these kind of markets. So at least for them, whether it made any sense or not.
Hello, sir. Deepti here.
Please, thanks.
Thank you, sir, for sharing this presentation. So, I don't belong to this category. I mean, basically, I was not having much information regarding this area. So, I think after seeing your presentation, I got, some information and some knowledge about the area. So, I would say, so thank you so much for sharing this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You or anyone else having any doubt or any query or want to understand more or something like that?
I don't think so, sir. The participants are not responding. So anything is there, so they can, I think, come up and say something. I think Jha sir can intervene then.
So shall we conclude the session or?
Ask BK Jha.
Hello. Hello. Shukla.
So shall we conclude the session or actually no one is having any query?
Okay, they will have. Participants are ready to ask questions.
No, I think I was so boring. I couldn't meet up to their expectations.
No. Information was very worthy. Now, one question has come.
Yeah, please.
Who will pay rest half amount?
So suppose any person, suppose I am a seller of any commodity. I want to make use of a warehouse to deliver my commodity. I am a producer, not farmer. So I am a trader or a stockist whatsoever. So I am trading. I want to deliver on the exchange. So all the charges I need to bear. I personally need to bear all the charges till the commodity is being taken over, handed over to the buyer side. Till that point in time, I need to pay my warehousing rent, my transportation, and all those things related to that thing I need to pay. But to encourage farmers or to encourage FPO participate in this derivative market, what exchange and regulators have done, they are providing certain kind of incentives. So anyway, it was sellers' duty to pay all those charges. But over here, for few of the activities, 100%, for few of the activities, 50% are being borne by the exchange. Rest anyway, farmer need to or FPO need to bear. Because suppose any farmer need to sell its produce to what he needs to do, he needs to take it, transport it from his field or his location to the mandi. So transportation cost is being borne by the farmer itself. Over here also, that over here instead of farmer, it is FPO. So transportation costs need to be borne by the FPOs, but 50% of that cost would be reimbursed to them as an incentive to encourage them participate, to encourage them use more and more of this derivative market.
Okay. Anybody else? Any else? Okay. If no one is having any query, to Neeraj Shukla, who has been with us for the last 1.5 hours and delivered a nice lecture for the benefit of the participants. Dear sir, within a short span of time, you could prepare a presentation very well. And it is the first presentation that you just stuck to the time. It's really the best example of time management. With this word, I can extend you my and good luck in this. Be safe, stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you a lot for providing us this opportunity to present our organization in front of you all. So stay safe, stay healthy. That's all the demand of the time.